1, 2. All right, here we go. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in the throes of what we do here at Detroit is Different, it is fall. It's the harvest time. Things are coming to life, being more abundant. So Detroit is Different, definitely going to tour into a lot of these black stories. So tour, pour, and then carry on that. The legacy black Detroit, we love here. And so many people be like, always black, always black. Black shirt, black hoodie, right? Black frames, black skin, all of this. We pouring in because we're edifying and uplifting a lot of the things that I think make Detroit different on the cool creativity, culture, and community. So in this community, it's like really a house off 12th Street, Rosa Parks Boulevard. If you look at the sign, and God bless Mother Rosa for being a person that made her way to Detroit, right? And in the throes of the city of Detroit, it's a lot of rich history of black movements, right? Especially when we think of the square. The square is like my community in my own mind. So that's like Dexter, that's 12th Street. And in the middle, you got Linwood, right? And Linwood is a place that has impacted the world of the black experience. So New Bethel Baptist Church is something that stands out immediately. C.L. Franklin, being a voice, like an evangelist that comes from Tennessee, comes here with a daughter that changes the way we look at music with talent and also on that business more so than many others. But CL himself, an institution, and then even a couple, just like, and I really mean like walking distance, even if you're 90 years old walking. And shout out to the people 90 and walking. You got the Shrine of the Black Madonna, the Institution for African Centered Christianity. It's right there, okay? And then if you go up the block the other way, not too far. Now, this may be like a bicycle distance, right? You got Gold Organization. This is the foundation of what becomes the Republic of New Africa. The Obadeli brothers, Gaedi, Amari, they build something that now still oozes in thoughts. Like when we think of reparations and those ties, and also people that were big time mentors, big homies to one of my big homies, rest in peace, Joanne Watson. But all of this going on Linwood in black organizing really starts with a mother of an organization that pours so much into the whole concept of you a God, black man. You a God, black man. And this is prevalent. I'm talking about like 1930s, 1940s. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm a God. I'm getting treated, I left the South just to save my life. And this organization is the Nation of Islam that comes to life and springs in the city of Detroit, right in these neighborhoods. And the foundations of the Nation of Islam and that relationship definitely known by the master teacher, the messenger, Elijah Muhammad. In studio with me now is the nephew of Elijah Muhammad, one of the many nephews and family, as you know, and being abundant through Islam is deep, especially through the Nation of Islam. So, Brother Muhammad, how are you today?
I am fine. Thank you for having me, for coming here and discussing the whereabouts of my father and mother and the Nation of Islam, how it began.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very honored to be here to share that with you.
Wow, that's deep. It's glad to have you here because this, like so many people that always say, like, Car, you make everything a Detroit story because so much of the black experience is a Detroit story. People went to Hollywood to become stars. People came to Detroit to sustain families, and black people could do that. Hence, that's why black people from Detroit have been moving the world for so long. So, with that being said, your family, what brought them to Detroit and where they come from?
Well, my family comes from Georgia, Cordell, Georgia. They was from different parts of Georgia than the South.
Okay.
And my grandfather, by the name of Willie Poole, he was a sharekeeper. So he tended the land of the slave owner. He was one that was looking for a way out of the South as far as the Jim Crow's way of life there that they was trying to avoid. And so he came to Detroit. He had, he also was a minister, a Baptist preacher. He had I think about 4 churches there. He was a minister over.
Okay, he sound like a bishop. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Running all them churches.
yeah.
So now, so people kind of get this, and you can go back and refer to archives of Detroit is Different when I have my interview with Roderick Miller, and we talk about the whole concept of sharecropping and what that meant. In in some ways, somebody could make some legal arguments that some of these shared businesses are kind of like that, in the sense of like you're sharing the crop with whomever quote unquote owns the crop. And this was very tough negotiations for many people, because you'd imagine a person that just enslaved you now says, hey, you're free and you can stay here, we can share in the profits of the crop. So they can say, oh, this is a bad crop, this isn't a crop, and then they're going to charge you rent and charge you for crops. It was a bad deal, hence the Great Migration, and not to mention Jim Crow, the atrocities of the Ku Klux Klan, because the Ku Klux Klan is real. It's more than just in the films, and just the bigotry and the racism and all of that led to so many people coming up north. And it ain't like up north was peaches and cream either for black folks in the experience, but certain opportunities were abundant here in places like Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Gary, Indiana, Akron, Flint, all these places where black folks move, Chicago, it's it brings light to things. So your family, you said from where in Georgia?
It was from Cordell, Georgia.
Whereabouts is that?
I think it was far south of Georgia.
Okay.
In that area.
Okay, so southern Georgia. Okay,
Yeah,
so
southern
almost
Georgia.
when I think southern Georgia, I think like my family, like them Florida people. So that was a heck of a trip on up.
Right.
Because cutting through Georgia, even to this day, if you black,
Oh yeah,
Georgia, one of them places, boy, you'll go for a visit.
yeah, absolutely.
Possibly stay for more than tickets.
Mm.
For real. Atlanta black, but Georgia, like Michigan, Detroit black, but it's a lot of red hats. Some of them got some blue crosses through them too. So with that being said, your family comes here. Whereabouts? Where do they move when they come here?
Well, they came here to Black Bottom, Detroit.
Okay, so they made their way to Black Bottom in the beginning. Okay, do you know what years?
I think they came up here in 1921.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my father was his age was he was 9 years old.
Mm.
And my mother came from Mississippi.
Ah, okay.
And she was about she was 4.
Okay, and
4 years old.
And see, that's also where the migration patterns are interesting, because a lot of folks, black folks from Mississippi, made their way to Chicago, even though we cousin cities, you know what I'm saying? But I think those patterns, hence, like, even if you follow the blues and a fan like it with me, Muddy over there in Chicago, John Lee Hooker over here in Detroit, things like that.
Absolutely.
So, Mississippi, what made her people up this way?
Well, they always found the Great Migration, looking for a better way of life.
Okay.
The jobs was here. They was looking for something out of a way of building a new life. So Detroit was one of the places where they found themselves here. Especially it was mostly my grandparents that really wanted to move out of there.
Okay.
And so they had to follow their parents where they came to. So Detroit was one of the places where they found ground.
So in finding that ground in Black Bottom, so and staying there as that story kind of continues, your parents, and you're Elijah Muhammad's nephew. At that time, when your parents meet and they're here, is he paternal, maternal?
Well, he was when they came here.
Or which side? Your mom's side or your dad's side? Who is he a brother of?
Elijah Muhammad is he's a brother of my father, John Muhammad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that family definitely the roots from Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
So and and definitely still here. So if your father was 9 upon coming here, how old was Elijah at the time?
He was in his 20s.
Okay, so much older,
He was
and
much older.
still wanted to make the move with the family.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you mentioned that your grandfather being a Baptist preacher in 4 different churches.
4 different churches.
Okay, and that was down south.
That was down south.
When he comes here, where does his faith go?
His faith, he wanted to start another church here.
I'm sure.
And the people here, he just couldn't get in. It was very different from down in Georgia.
Hilarious. Detroit is different.
So it was very different. So he had a hard time to try to start a organization here, a church.
Mm-hmm.
And he began to look other places.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted his family here. So what he did was he sent back to Georgia to get his family. He found something at work in Detroit, and he began to get his.
Where did he work?
Well, he was still doing his normal thing as far as being a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those things were still in his system where he was working, still trying to find a church
Mm-hmm.
to gather people around. So
And the trade that he picked up to send for family to come.
the trade that he picked up, he didn't have mostly of a trade.
Mm.
Well, let me run back his trade. He was mostly wanted to just flee Florida, flee Georgia, and the trade that I don't recall of what he was
doing
at that time to keep money up. But my understanding was that when he was down in Georgia, he was the only black person that could sell his cotton. He had cotton down there on his farm.
Mm.
He was the only person that could sell it on the market, and he was giving that permission by the judge of the county of the city of that time, and he raised a lot of money to bring his family up here. So he lived off some of that money that he made down in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and he's beginning to That's when he started to preach and see if he can get another congregation going.
So I already want to tip my hat to how difficult that must have been for your grandfather to do, because we have to think about the science of what that is. So for a lot of people that okay, I'm gonna break into like I am on Linwood. So as much as I brought up the faith, it's a lot of street organizations over here. So it'd be like working off the work, as they say. So you're working off a consignment, and that's really where sharecropping is. It's like for all of my street economists, as they would say, if you are quote unquote fronted whatever that in business would be. So you're fronted access to this land. You have the skill set, obviously, to tend to yielding the crop of cotton. You were, and your family probably always doing it, but the person that owns the land, and when we think about laws here, and it's an attorney actually here too, a lot of laws in America is built on who owns something. Hence, ownership matters so much. So to know that at that time, in the 1900s in Georgia, a black man could come in with a sharecropping agreement and then figure out how to go direct to market. Hence, you're sharing the crop because the white man had the access to go to market, meaning going to market, meaning like you're gonna have to share this crop with me, because if you try to sell this, they'll know that it's from my property, and nobody will buy it, and you'll probably possibly go to jail, possibly be lynched, deal with what other atrocities, or now you're going to have to basically yield so much more of the crop. So for your grandfather to work a deal like that out in southern Georgia, right there next to Florida, that already says some of the skill sets that he had or something in the know-how. I mean, you said he was leading 4 churches too.
Oh, yeah.
Your grandfather has some skill sets too,
Definitely
because
has some skill sets. Yeah, right.
that's
Yeah,
not commonplace.
right. Well, his churches are understand that there was mixed churches. They just wasn't black people. There was also Caucasian people who came to his
Interesting.
churches also.
Okay.
So he had a very respectable person,
Hmm.
Poole family at
Okay.
that time. It was called Poole,
Okay. All
and
right.
he had great outset there in that part of Georgia.
And this
Yeah,
also builds a premise of what your uncle and your father see as possibilities of what can happen and still understand in America in the system it is, because that's very bold.
absolutely. Yeah,
So now with that savings, to live off savings, which I would say most Americans can't live off savings, he comes here to Detroit, um, begins finding his way, trying to get a footing in faith, but still sends for the family. When he sends for the family, your uncle is older. How large of a family, and who is he sending for?
well, the family of at that time he had a family of 13,
Wow. So I guess
and
that's how you
yeah,
tended to that crop so
right,
well.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So he sent for all 13, and oldest, youngest, and I know it's hard to remember all those uncles and aunts, but where does Elijah lie, and then where does your father lie?
Well, my father lies into the point where he was a young,
Well, you said he was nine.
nine
Well, I
years
guess I
old.
should
So,
say where when I say
well,
lie, meaning
so
is your father like the third
oh,
youngest, the
oh,
second
no, my
oldest?
father is the youngest of the 13 children.
Oh, he's the baby
He's the
boy.
baby boy, yeah,
Okay.
and Elijah is the seventh child of the children.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. So he the baby boy.
he's the
So
baby boy.
they poured into
Yeah, they
him.
poured in. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
They was like,
uh,
oh man, somebody else to eat some food. All
yeah,
right. So that's interesting that's kind of the take. And in coming here, also being that your father's so young, he's for the most part raised in the city of Detroit.
absolutely. Yeah, he was raised here.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And your mother, on the other hand, you said her family's from Mississippi.
Right.
Does she come from Mississippi, or was she already here? How old was she when she made the trek?
When she was 4 years old when
Oh,
she came here with
okay.
her parents, and also her father was a preacher.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they both was preachers.
Okay. The faith is just
Yeah,
pouring in.
right.
Okay. And now I just got to ask, whereabouts in Mississippi?
I think it was Romersville,
Okay. And
Mississippi.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And I
so
just asked, is that like near a bordering state? Is that like Louisiana? Is that like north, south, or
I
you don't
think it was
know?
like north or south. I don't
Okay.
quite.
All right. Okay. So from there in Black Bottom, um, and along this journey, how do your parents meet?
Well, what happened was they met when they met. There was a man called W.D. Farad, Master Farad Muhammad,
Hmm.
and he was talking about a new way of life and living and understanding of freedom, justice, and equality. And he had was teaching, going around from house to house, teaching uh, African American people about they was from um, they was from Africa.
Hmm.
That they was the Asiatic black people,
Hmm.
and that they was kings, queens. He said, he was selling silk, around teaching that these people was great people, and that he was teaching them different ways of how they lived back in Africa. So my mother and father, when they got older, I think my mother was like 17 years of age, and my father was in like 20
Hmm.
something of age. They came into what they call his places was called the temples of Islam, the holy temples of Islam,
Hmm.
and that's where my mother and father met. And they was following their mother and father, which they also came into the temples of Islam.
So your grandfather, at the time, if they're following their mother and father, so your grandfather made his way into the teachings of the master teacher uh, at that time. So now I guess, and that's from him being a Baptist minister. And then also, you said your mother's father was a preacher as well. What was the connection you think between the teachings of the master teacher to your grandfather to connect if he's been, not just a Baptist preacher? I mean, he was a Baptist preacher over multiple churches. He's done this work. I'm assuming to do that, I mean, he probably could quote scripture, eloquently.
Right.
What made that connection?
What made the connection was when Master Farrar was teaching. He wasn't so much teaching about Christianity. He was teaching how to be yourself, how to how freedom and justice was a part of your lifestyle, and that it was something that was caught on when he was speaking, that he made them look in another direction other than Christianity. He knew Christianity was failing them. This is Master Furqan Mohammed. He knew Christianity was failing them, so he didn't come to them as a preacher. He came to them as a friend.
So it was more so like choosing the way of life than a faith.
In a
So
faith.
it wasn't necessarily like, hey, put the book down and come over here.
Right.
It was more like, this is the way of life that you should lead.
Correct.
Mhm.
Absolutely. He knew that they was people of faith.
And even at the time, we have to think of, like, I'm assuming this is making the trek in 1920. So this may be, when is your grandfather introduced?
Well, what happened was, this is kind of like another story. The person that really found out who was Master Furqan Mohammed was another son.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Johnny,
Your uncle.
my other uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And he the one who came and introduced him that this man, W.D. Farad, the master, was teaching this type of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Black man is God, that the white man was the devil,
Mm-hmm.
and that they was using technology to trick us, and that we was a better people than they were.
Okay, and for people to understand, these are the foundations of the Nation of Islam that are being laid in these teachings. So it's your Uncle Johnny that comes home, because I'm just putting myself in these
Yeah.
real life situations, walks in, says, hey, yo, Ma, Dad, I'm God, you God, and they the devil. That could be seen as extremely provocative. Like, okay, what I don't even know what the I don't know what substance you on, son. What was the what like
Well,
how was it even welcome as a thought process, you think, from your
Well, what-
grandfather and grandmother?
yeah, what happened was they was invited to hear W.D. Farad. So
Okay.
it was a message going on
Mhm.
all around in
Where
Black Bottom of Detroit.
okay, throughout
Yeah.
Black Bottom.
Well,
Mhm.
throughout Black Bottom, that this man W.D. Farad was saying these things. It was something that they never heard, calling the white man the devil
Mhm.
and making him look like the extreme energy, the extreme enemy that he is,
Mhm.
and that he was a made man,
Mhm.
and that their history was more further back in history, that there was before the white man was on the scene, that the black people was here doing all these things before he even came about. So these are new things that they was hearing from this man W.D. Farad, because he was telling them histories back of when uh, their grandparents, or their mothers, or the people that that they came from, was greater people than what they
Were being portrayed at the
portrayed
time.
at the time
I
when they
mean,
was here.
even to this day, the depiction of Africa, Afrocentricity, and blackness itself can be something seen from either a deficit lens or a derogatory lens oftentimes when we think of these tools of American media. Hence, I'm looking always to pour in and edify the right way. And even the the topics and content that can be seen from a derogatory or deficit lens, I'm looking to contextualize the right way so it's an understanding of what's being told through these lenses. That's something that I challenge myself with my marketing mind and creativity to do. But that's definitely not the exhaustive way that a lot of other media outlets today do. Now, back then, boy, oh boy, I mean, the whole concept of blackface at the time, I mean, and what becomes of the minstrel show is like a groundswell of like that is entertainment. I mean, when we think of Birth of a Nation, which is a film that celebrates the start of the Ku Klux Klan and also incepts the whole concept of black men being savagery rapists towards white women. Like this was filmed and screened in our White House multiple times with a procession of the Ku Klux Klan right in front of the White House. Like this is American history. So a lot of the imagery of black folks at the time, to hear something like "Black man, you God" is overwhelming today. But back then, I can only imagine, which now connects me to your Uncle Johnny. What did your Uncle Johnny do?
Well, Uncle Johnny was, I don't know exactly what was his background as far as coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
They always come looking for jobs. They just coming here
Mm-hmm.
looking for a way of life. They did odd jobs. Some of the jobs that they at that time only paid like 25 cents
Mm-hmm.
an hour for jobs. And my Uncle Johnny was also one that was just one of those brothers that you can have around that does odd things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, and then we got to think about the rate of inflation. 25 cents may be what you're making on your job right now. I mean, knowing the good old power of the dollar. But let's put that into context. But I have to think about something like that because if he's offering that to his friend, to his family, I'm assuming he's speaking that to his friends. And saying something like that at that time, I assume may get you kicked out of a job if you're working for black people, let alone if you're working for the man, as they say. And him being bold enough to welcome the family over to the teachings of Furqan Mohammed. So, so within this, your Uncle Johnny, I assume, eventually gets the whole family to join.
Well, they all joined by coming seeing WD Farad. So it was a
All 13, all 13 children, and your mother and your grandmother and grandfather.
correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impactful. So with that, now I have even more of a premise and understanding that Elijah Muhammad is anchored by his siblings entering into the Nation of Islam as well in full and support from his mother and father. A lot of people today, even going into the Nation of Islam, don't get support like that from their family structure, which characterizes things. And then the baby boy, your father. So when do they join and follow the teachings in this way of life?
Well, my mother and father joined in almost in the same year, 1931.
Okay, how old is your father?
My father's about 24 years of age, and my
And
mother's about 17 of
okay,
age. Yeah.
okay.
So
So in that they meet there, and upon meeting, what's the role, and what do your father and mother look at for work now? How does that impact their way of life and them just approaching life?
well, I understand my mother was the secretary of the movement. She was the uh, reformer.
Mm-hmm.
She was appointed reformer by Master Farad Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
She was one that could type letters, and they were looking for someone who can type, and she was one that W.D. Farad used
Okay, and
as
then
a
I'm forgetting
secretary.
I'm forgetting some Detroit's different details. What schools did they go to?
She went to Commerce.
Okay, so
So
Commerce is a school that at one point in time, shout out Mount Shirley. Mount Shirley went to Commerce. It's one of those schools that a lot of um, a lot of especially women went to and learned receptionist skill sets. A lot of like key punching, data entry. At one point in time, typing was something that people needed to learn. And then also like in connecting from the World War II era, where a lot of women were definitely needed in a lot of the ordering here in the city of Detroit specifically, that skill set was very abundant. And shout out to the start of what becomes Lewis College of Business, and that whole family kind of connecting in that world too. But Commerce, what about your dad?
um, excuse me. I don't know what the name of the school he went to, but he went to school. He was one that took up. He got a job for at the mail, Saudi mail for the
Hmm.
U.S. mail company,
Okay.
and he knew how to take records. He was a record keeper,
Okay. So work for the post
so it
office.
was the post office.
Hmm.
So he had that knowledge with him.
Okay.
So he also came to be a secretary
Okay.
under W.D. Farad. He had those skills.
So both ended up he saw their skill sets already in the workforce and said, okay, they can work in the office. And then that's where I'm guessing he leans over and asks your mom, like, hey, what I'm doing. That's where they meet. Now they working together.
And
So the natural connection is eventually to, find an alignment where some attraction is built and family comes.
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So so working in the office, um, and and definitely here in Detroit at that time, um, I'm guessing growing membership, dealing with membership, and leading this. What was their take in when I don't know if you even had these discussions with your parents, but um, if you were, what was their take to like what they were doing in their role in the movement at the time from working in those positions?
Well, my mother was one who had to do multi-task roles. She was came in as a captain over the MGT,
What's MGT?
Muslim Girls Training and Civilization class.
Hmm.
Those was taught by W.D. Farad as far as teaching the woman womanhood to be great mothers as far as keeping them to know their place in history, and also they know their place where they can be able to cook.
Hmm.
One of the things they was teaching was cooking. One of the things they had was to be to sew, and make their own garments.
Hmm.
Um, to also to be a leader in the family.
So I definitely have to say this because I already know a lot of women watching now are like, what a man gonna tell me how to be a woman in the first place and all of that. How did your mother take to that role and understanding? And was it like, can you just share a little bit about that? Because I know that naturally just triggers in my mind about that. And then it's like, well, I gotta cook. Why can't he cook? And things like that.
Well, there was new food that W.D. Farad had. He had put them on a diet, changing the way they eat. He didn't allow them to eat any pork.
Hmm.
He allowed them to stay at a certain weight.
Mm.
He allowed them to be fast moving, fast thinkers. He wanted them to be soldiers.
And how did your mom like take to it? Like, did she look at it like what was her perspective, I guess, of that? Because just that outside level of thought process of a man and a woman's role could definitely be like, possibly seen as
Well, there was she took it very easily because it was something that was a learning experience
hmm.
for them.
Hmm.
To cook on their own because they wasn't allowed to go out and shop. As far as going to the supermarkets, they was teaching them how to make their own wheat bread, He told them how to make their own soup, eating bean soup. He brought bean soup into the diet. Um, he made different arrangements for them to um, to be bakers and to learn how to cook. So it was something that was a diet that needed to be changed among the African American women there. So this was
Okay.
something that was they had to change into the line.
So this foundation starts with your mother, and so that's also in an office and a role in helping, I guess, pour into uh, the women of the movement there, and following the teachings. Your father is working in the office. Your uncle, what's your uncle doing at the time?
My uncle was one who knew how to speak, talk. He was one that knew lessons, and he had a great vision of how to bring the speakers to speak to his family or to speak to the family of the movement.
What was he
So,
doing? What for work? What was he doing
well,
before
my
in the
understanding that
movement?
he used to work for on the railroad
Mm,
with the gathering up coal, coals, you
mm.
cook. He worked there, and he also worked also in the all the factory
Hmm.
here. Yeah.
Okay, all right, and so then of your family, so that's your mother, your father, and your uncle. Does the rest of your family end up working directly within the movement, or are they still following the teachings but still working in other American workforces?
Yes, there was. Yeah,
Okay,
they all got jobs. Most
okay,
of them got jobs into the factories. That
okay,
was here. My father worked for Chrysler.
okay.
Yeah,
All right. So, so your father worked in the office and for
in
Chrysler
Chrysler.
simultaneously.
Yes. Mm,
Interesting.
yep.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. I'm wondering, like, does some of those teachings end up kind of going into a lot of what drum becomes? You know what I'm saying? When we thinking about the revolutionary auto workers. But shout out to General Baker and all of that foundation that builds. So so this is the foundations of the teachings. Where does where does I guess I would say, like, in this, you, when are you born, and are you oldest, youngest, brothers, sisters?
I am 14 of us.
Okay.
I'm the eighth child.
Okay.
There was 8 boys and 6 girls.
Okay. All right. And where are you all living at the time?
We was living the last time I was living on Townsend,
Hmm.
24 Townsend. We
Okay.
was living there. That's the last that I know of at this time.
Okay. And you coming up in your childhood in the movement as well. Where are you going to school? Kind of where is your journey and your path?
Well, there was a school established under W.D. Farad called University of Islam,
Hmm.
and we all went to that school.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like? What do you remember?
The school there was we it was separate for the girls and the boys. The
Hmm.
girls came in the morning time, and the boys came in the evening.
Okay.
And we all that's where we learned training. We did what you call drilling. We had drilling. We had
What type of drills?
uh, just the military drill,
Okay.
uh, and we also had a uh, discipline type of thing. That's what the drill came about, was discipline for us. So
Hmm.
we was great at that point.
How did you? I mean, being a child, how did you appreciate it? How did you
Well, it
take to
was
it?
it was good.
Okay.
It was good. It learned you discipline. We had karate classes. We studied karate,
Mm.
self defense.
Okay.
We had occasion where we had to go out and sell the Muhammad Speaks newspaper at the time,
Mm.
and we was just a family of brotherhood.
Okay. All right, and there from for that school, and then that maturation, you go to the university for all of your schooling.
All the schooling, yeah, handwriting, spelling.
Okay,
We had all the math, all those things was part of the school
okay.
curriculum. Yeah,
And so basically, I'm guessing. And when do you start and when do you finish? Is it like was it preschool all the way to 12th grade or
it was preschool always 12th grade. Yeah.
okay?
Mhm.
All right. So upon graduation, where does that put you?
Well, they graduated from the University of Islam,
Hmm.
and there was graduation classes,
Hmm.
and we had those type of things going on, just like in a normal school.
Okay. So okay, and after upon your graduation, where were you? Where what role did you play? What were you doing? What were you thinking when you graduated from the university?
Well, what happened was my father also had a restaurant that we had
Okay.
called Shabazz Restaurant,
Where was that?
and it was next door to the temple on Linwood right now. It's called Wali Muhammad Masjid.
Okay.
So we had a family business, and we all worked in that business.
What did you do?
Well, waiter, wash dishes,
Whatever was
whatever
needed,
was
you
ever
did.
needed
Okay.
to
Okay.
to fill in.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one of the things that my father had started.
So after graduating from the university, you take on more of a role inside the restaurant then.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what do you remember about that restaurant? Because this is something that I think a lot of people may say, but people say, man, that Nation of Islam fish sandwich, you're getting a lot of that Linwood energy too. And what era, like what years would you say?
This was back in around about 69, 70.
Okay.
Uh,
So this is post rebellion here in Detroit.
yeah.
Okay. And also it's one to remember that rebellion starts very close to all of those places that I mentioned on Linwood. And it's a reason why a lot of those places on Linwood nobody touched because of those relationships with community. Another place I want to shout out is always go to my florist, Brazelton Flowers. Shout out Mr. Brazelton and that whole family. But a lot of anchors of black movement and developments and community engagement are taking place right there. That's another place that was untouched. So what was that like? I mean, just witnessing this rebellion going on and seeing these tanks up and down Linwood and throughout the community, and nobody's really even thinking about touching the restaurant.
Well, we was right across the street from that.
Hmm.
It's Central High School
Yeah.
at the
Okay. So
time.
yeah. Also,
So
yeah. Central High
so
School becomes the post of the National Guard,
right, exactly. So
right across the street from the Nation of Islam.
right. So they came over and they patronized the restaurant.
Hmm.
Um, the school that got out, the Central High School, they came over and patronized the restaurant also.
And one second,
So
we got to
uh,
frame that a whole lot more because people don't understand when I say Detroit is different. So, National Guard soldiers that are deployed into the city of Detroit to stop at the time what people would say is this crazy black uprising of crazy folks being stirred up. And when they think about going to get some food, they're walking across the street to a restaurant next to a temple of the Nation of Islam. That's why I say Detroit is different because something like that exists. Because it's hard, and you're saying this like it's just commonplace, but most people would think that the U.S. military would go out of their way to not want to spend a dime. But the food was that good. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's where we going. That's where the soldiers are coming.
yeah, absolutely. And we was there for a while. I mean,
Hmm.
the restaurant was there, and uh, that was our living.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. And the restaurant business is tough. The
yeah.
restaurant business is tough. I mean, as people find out all the time. So managing that over time, and you all did that as a family. I'm guessing over the years, do you move into like management of the space, or you are as you continue to grow? Like, who kind of takes the helm of the 14 of you all?
Well, we all worked as a key family. There wasn't anyone that said, "Well, the management." My father kept the management to himself as
Okay.
far as managing everything, but we was just mostly uh, those who was running at that time. He opened up another place next door called the Sweet Shop, where we was getting sweets from Chicago, from Shabazz Bakery there that we had was selling.
Can you talk a
So,
little bit about the expansion into other cities like Chicago?
well, Chicago began under W.D. Farad. He set up three temples back in 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
He set up Chicago. He set up Detroit, Chicago, and Milwaukee, and those are three that was set up
Mm-hmm.
before Elijah Muhammad came into play as far as the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And Chicago happens to be the center point of the Nation of Islam, and that's where he grew. He built the Nation of Islam off of the uh, the foundation of Master Farad Muhammad.
Okay, so I'm guessing your family's taking a lot of trips up and down 94 and even
Yeah,
further. Yeah, I didn't know about the Milwaukee thing. Boy, the snow that you guys were driving through. But that connection and even connecting in that bakery and really building what shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson, those vertical markets meaning basically like systems that are exclusive within like black dollar passing the black dollar to black dollar to black dollar. The network begins with the shops and what eventually becomes airports and so many other things just under the guise of a nation of Islam.
sure.
So as your uncle assumes this role in leadership, where does that how does your family respond to this?
Responded very well. The whole community of the Nation of Islam, because there was businesses up and down Linwood. We had the O&C Market, which was a place where we can go shop for food.
Hmm.
We had a clothing store down the street. Um,
What down all on Linwood?
all on Linwood. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and
Linwood.
and,
This is
and
on Linwood.
and hence, like I tell you guys, Linwood is something over here with this square, and this is uh, monumental of an institution, and then they're seeing this connection in the Chicago and Milwaukee, as you're saying, and then also soon other the expansion of other temples and the organizing. We think of obviously. Rest in peace, Malik El Shabazz or Malcolm X, as it would be, and many others, Muhammad Ali, in the growth and the expansion during this time in the late '60s to the '70s. What's the what's the tone that your family's just looking at from those teachings of this man that was through black bottom, and you all are following this path? What's the sediment of your family, kind of?
It was the economic thing, as far as to be independent.
Hmm.
Um, those things was driven into us.
Okay.
Those things we picked up out of the leadership of Master Farad Muhammad to be totally independent
Hmm.
of the Caucasian man. So we took that and strided. So it was black independence.
Hmm.
It was those things that he was teaching made us aware of what was going on. That we need to do something for ourselves, to
Okay.
know thyself, to understand who we are, to make ourselves a better people. So those things was the things that we picked up from him. His whole thing was when he came here was not really so much about Islam. It was mostly about freedom, justice, and equality.
Mm.
But Islam was the thing that he used to attract us as a religion instead of Christianity.
Okay.
So he used that as a point of teaching us, making us more aware to know ourselves, know thyself, that you're a greater people than what the slave master had put on you. So he was beginning, these things made us who we are today, the Nation of Islam. So we are, was made to be independent thinkers.
Hmm.
So we took that. And the Holy Elijah Muhammad also took it as to be a part of our lifestyle to go into uh, building a nation of our own. So he began to get farmland in Mississippi, Georgia, and right here in Michigan.
Yeah.
So those things was made us grow to be independent thinkers, independent people.
And the alignment of a lot of the movements that we think of when we think of black independence, black struggle, the Nation of Islam and what that stands for, the UNIA and Marcus Messiah Garvey, and what that stood for, the Republic of New Africa, right here in these grounds and these thought processes of independent nation and what that is, always being like a movement that's on a pulse of the minds of Black Americans. So now, because we're getting closer to a close, I got to fast forward, and I'm gonna definitely have to get you back to get some of these other details between these times. But Attorney Gregory Reed reaches out and says, "Hey, got somebody that you need to interview," and I'm like, "All right, it's stuff for people that know me. It's like if you're reaching out to me, I've been trying to find like I need about 6 more hours in a day. I'm trying to figure out how to do that, right? But I haven't figured it out yet. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So that introduction kind of comes where at one point in time you find a lot of the works, the teachings, that office work of your mother and your father. I'm guessing, and the writings of the foundation of the Nation of Islam. Tell that story.
Can you repeat that again?
You find a lot of the works, the teachings, the writings, a lot of the paperwork
Right.
of the foundation of the Nation of Islam.
Right. Well,
Share the story.
These things was when my father passed. He well, let me go back a little bit farther. He was one that he wanted someone to take care of him, and he chose myself
Mm-hmm.
to help take care of him. So those things happens to be the connection with my father,
Mm-hmm.
and he would always tell me the history of the Nation of Islam
Mm-hmm.
and those things. But he one day he came to me and said, "I'm going to leave you something," and I didn't know what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But he was writing a book on his brother called the Man's from Sandersville, Georgia.
So he was writing a book on Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
Okay.
And he was trying to find the papers that he had left
Mm-hmm.
off them, and he misplaced them. And he asked me if I ever come about them is to bring them back to him to let him know where he left them at. But at the time when I was searching through the house, I discovered that there was other papers that was there.
Mm-hmm.
But this was after his passing, when I never did find him when he was living.
Yeah.
But after his passing, I was going through the house, and there was something in boxes that was there on the attic, and like 4 or 5 boxes. And I went to open them up, and there was all things on Master Furqan Mohammed, the 1930s, the beginning, how the Nation of Islam started its beginning from the foundation inside his work,
Mm-hmm.
um, how he came up with the idea of the Nation of Islam,
Yeah.
and his the study of how the University of Islam began.
And you actually have some of the works now. Can you show one of the books that you have before you? You can just show towards the screen.
I can show. Okay, I can show you um, the letters that he had.
Okay.
Um, this is a copy of the picture of Master Farad Muhammad
Mm-hmm.
that was taken that he gave. This is a copy of it
Okay.
that he gave my mother. He
Mm-hmm.
gave a picture of himself to all those pioneers
Yeah.
at the time. So he gave this picture out to them that he wanted them to have of himself.
Okay.
And the picture of him is looking down into the Quran, reading the
Mhm.
Quran. So he wanted to know that when he came to bring us the Quran.
Okay.
So that's the book we use now to study ourselves from.
Hmm.
And what we have here is back here. In the back. When you came into the Nation of Islam, you had to. What W. Farad wanted, if you could not enter into the Nation of Islam without a Muslim name,
Hmm.
and they had to write for their names and ask. They were telling them that he believed in the history,
Hmm.
what he was teaching, his teachings, and
Yeah.
they had wanted to be followers and members of him. So everyone who came into the Nation of Islam was a student of Master Furqan Mohammed,
Hmm.
and they wanted to join the organization. So they had to write a letter stating that they wanted to join his organization, which was Nation of Islam, or the Muslim at the time. So this is a letter that was
Oh, you could just hold up, but I'll look. I would like to
okay,
see it
yeah,
shortly too.
letter that they back in 1930 that asking him to for their names. And
And
this
let,
is
let me see.
okay.
Let me see that letter.
That's the envelope on the time.
Okay.
This is
That's a copy.
yes a copy.
Okay. Let me see. All right. And as I read this, to the Temple of Islam.
On Hastings Street.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So people know 3408 Hastings Street,
Yeah.
Detroit, Michigan. Um, and and the foundations. Getting rid of the slave name.
So Master Farad Muhammad, when he was here back in 1930, gave out 25,000 Muslim names
Wow.
right here in Detroit.
Okay.
And this is a letter that to show that when you came into the Nation of Islam, that the you was a member
Uh huh.
to reclaiming your own
Hmm.
to come into the Nation of Islam,
Yep.
reclaiming yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that you already have known. You know yourself now. That you're beginning to understand who you are. So those names are the officials that came in. Those names are the officials there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that they made sure that you was a member of the Nation of Islam.
All right. And you find these documents. And what's your and how do you end up connecting to Attorney Reed and wanting to connect this information to the masses and share this? What was it that had you say, okay, this isn't just something that should stay in the family's keep. I would like more to see this.
Well, I think it's something my father wanted to happen
Okay.
because he uh, the words he was saying to me, I'm giving you something that you probably don't even know what you're getting,
Mm-hmm.
is to go into it and get the understanding of it. So that's when I found Mr. Reed,
Mm.
it, and to get these things into the right order to be presented to those who wants to know more on how the Nation of Islam got its beginning.
In Attorney Reed's work with the archival and history behind the estates of Mother Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, even the work with so many others, the last poets, and actually something that I found out today with Mr. Reed in studio about some of the connection to Michigan State University's football team being the first integrated football team. Um, his reputation for Black history is known internationally. So with this, as we kind of come to a close here, what would be your grand vision of this work? What would you like to see? What would be success for this work for you?
Well, the success of the work would be to open up the minds of those who want to see Black people move in a greater direction as far as knowing themselves, to know themselves. Because all the history here that was given to those people back in the 1930s woke them up to bring themselves to a better life and understanding who they are. So I think this will help other people who would want to get a better life or who wants to know the religion of Islam and how it began to evolve around in Detroit in the 1930s. That here's a man that came from the West and he came from the East and found the people and changed their minds. There was a slave minds, there was slave people, and opened up their minds to make them a greater people. That's something that haven't been done in this time on earth, and that they could share the wealth of the knowledge and the wisdom that would maybe some of these people would take it and use it for themselves to help move themselves in the right directions to understand who they are. That this was a part of your history.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And we think of the offerings of what the nation has done for Black people, and what your uncle has offered. I mean, how to eat to live is alone a piece of that has been that matters so much more today as we grow older. And then also that's a testament to you and your character that your father trusted you in caretaking. And then even now in his passing in the physical and caretaking for these works. So with that, we come to a close, but I got to hit you with the classic Detroit is different questions that are a little bit more cultural, but still always kind of tie all these Detroiters together. Very first car.
A Chevy.
Year, make, and model.
It was 72.
Oh, man. Man, oh, man. All right. When you get it?
I got it when I was about 24 years old. When I was 24. Yeah.
Okay. Where's the first place you went when you got it?
Over to my wife's house.
Okay. All right.
Where she is now. So, I drove it to different places around the city.
So y'all went for a cruise after?
Went to a cruise.
Okay, see, there you go. Yeah. See, that's a classic Detroit date. Just pick her up and be like, we ain't got nowhere to go.
Yeah, it was.
Well, we gonna ride. Yeah. We gonna ride. That's a classic Detroit date. I love it. All right, so with that, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. You get to play one song. What you playing?
Purple Rain by Prince.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then the last question. I think I probably know your answer to this, but you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
If I name who now?
You could rename the street of Woodward, Woodward Avenue. You get to rename it. Who you naming it after?
W.D. Farad.
Like I said, I think I know your answer. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. This was a rich, impactful story of Detroit history, but Black history, and something that will have an echo internationally. Thank you so much for entrusting this story here with Detroit is Different.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.